Welcome to Authentic Living with Roxanne, a place where we have conscious conversations about things that really matter in our lives. And now here's your host, Roxanne Derhaj.
Hi everyone, it's Roxanne Derhaj of Authentic Living with Roxanne. Thanks again for tuning in this week. This week I have two special guests, Gabriel Krenza and Robert Krenza, and they own BlackWolf Consultants, Inc. And men, I should say guys or men, thank you for coming on today and sharing the time with us.
Absolutely. Yeah, thank you for having us.
So I often say, we're all talking about transformational leadership, but I think it's something that even more so there's need to discuss transformational leadership in this time, well before the last bit that we've been through. But even more so, I'm thinking that individually, collectively, as a person, or just whether you're a CEO or the person at the front of a company, everybody's looking for transformation and have for a while, but now it's come to bear that we're needing it. It's not a nice to have anymore, but we all need it. So let's talk a little bit about, your company and kind of what was the beginning point when you decided that starting this company was something that you wanted to do.
One is why transformation and why is it so important now, and BlackWolf Consultants. Let me start with the BlackWolf Consultants piece, because the two are connected. And BlackWolf Consultants really came into inception in about 2013. Mm-hmm. Prior to that, I'd spent 20 years as a corporate consultant, traveling around the world, doing global consulting, anything from executive coaching, one-on-one work, to teamwork, to large corporate groups. I left as an independent contractor in 2012 and started BlackWolf in 2013 because specifically I thought that there was a really important gap in organizational development work and organization development, transformation, and individual transformation. Mm-hmm. So BlackWolf was created specifically for the purposes of providing or presenting a transformational program to corporate America, to corporate world. BlackWolf started out as Krenza Leadership Strategies. And I got a lot of feedback very quickly from clients that I'd worked with for years, really challenging my choice. And I chose BlackWolf Krenza Leadership Strategies because I was nervous and uncertain on what to call the company. And after the feedback, I said to my wife, who is also working in BlackWolf Consultants, what had just occurred. And I asked her for some guidance in how I would name the company. And she said, why don't you do what you always do, which is meditate. And so go within and ask for help and support on what I wanted to call the company. And the BlackWolf has been a totem of mine for more than 30 years. And I was doing a lot of Native American studies 30 years ago and came to understand that the totem was a spiritual guide that you could ask for help at any point that you needed it. And when I asked, how do I ask for my totem? I was told, you ask for your totem. And so that's what I did. And literally the Black Wolf came into my meditation within several minutes, as though it was waiting to be asked. What I came to understand over the years was how valuable the Black Wolf totem was in helping me guide my own life path. BlackWolf Consultants, when I was sent a book called The Hero and the Outlaw by Carol Pearson by a client who I had worked with in the Middle East and was doing marketing work with me. And I read the book, and it talked about the importance of embracing the archetype of the of what your company stood for. So it's no wonder to me that the Black Wolf really came into my meditation very quickly, and it became very clear that the archetype that the Black Wolf was really representing was really twofold. And this is what Black Wolf means. Black Wolf means bringing light into times of darkness. So it really is the iconic symbol of the wolf howling in front of the moon. That's what that means. It means bringing light into times of darkness. The other symbol of the Black Wolf is the Pathfinder. The other archetype of the Black Wolf is Pathfinder. And the Pathfinder really represents this unique ability that the wolf has, which is that it's never lost. There's a lot of misunderstanding of the qualities of the wolf, and that's a separate conversation and really needs to be addressed and is important to be addressed. And we're addressing it as we do our work. So that's the name of our company, and we have about 7 consultants working for us globally. And we're a global consulting company focused on transformation.
So isn't it interesting that you went safe to name the company, and then you went inside to find what should have come naturally from you? And with most of us, when we're making a major decision, it's either based on fear or on love, right? Like to kind of go to that space, and you went inside, and you were able to kind of what a great name, first of all, but the symbolism behind it is actually kind of breathtaking when I think about leadership and the space that you have to go into to create that leader within yourself in order to shine the light on the path as you go. So Gabriel, tell me a little bit about you and when you got involved in the company and what it's been like working with your dad.
I feel in some ways I was indoctrinated into this line of work at a very early age. I have very clear memories of sayings like, you are your word, and do what you say you're going to do when you're going to do it, which really holds true in our work, with executives around the world. And so there's a lot of kind of very simple learnings that I was brought up with that are naturally, just kind of ingrained in this work. So when I decided to join Black Wolf just about 5 years ago, it was a very kind of graceful and ease-filled transition from my career. My academic background is in sustainability, and both my undergrad and master's work. I worked for the Natural Resources Defense Council for a half dozen years on environmental policy and food systems change. And during that time, I started to become more and more involved in strategic supply chain and operations for raw material sourcing, and I decided to go back to school and get my master's of business administration. Great program out in San Francisco. It was focused on it was an MBA in sustainability management. So very focused on the lens of triple bottom line, people, planet, profit. Kind of looking through that lens when approaching big business decisions. And after I graduated from that program, my father, Robert, approached me and said, "Hey, do you have any interest in doing some work with BlackWolf?" And I kind of chuckled, and I think I kind of muttered, "Yeah, that's not, that's not the type of work I do." And kind of the other parallel is my background guiding in the wilderness, for the National Outdoor Leadership School. I've been a senior instructor there for a dozen years, and that's, talk about transformation. I mean, you take teams of people out into the wilderness for 30 days at a time, and they come back completely changed and forever impacted. And so, when Robert approached me, I was like, well, thank you. I'm on a different trajectory, and our work is not very similar. And I think I kind of wanted to respectfully humor him. So I took on a little writing project and shadowed a consultant at BlackWolf, Burke Miller, and kind of like saw the process of him working with a team and engaging one-on-one and one-on-many, and I kind of had this almost epiphany moment where I was like, "Uh-oh, okay, this is exactly what I want to do," and so my approach to the work is much more experiential in kind of how I my offering to BlackWolf. So I create experiences for executives that are, I would say, more out of the box, taking folks outdoors and this idea of wilderness immersions, taking people, kind of allowing them the opportunity to unplug in order to reconnect with themselves and each other. And yeah, I couldn't be more grateful to do the work, and I continue to learn. It's a culture of curiosity and humility. I think the other piece I want to mention is how you introduced us. We're both men. We're also both white men, and I think the gift that we are very conscious about giving is how to be in contribution and how to really be in service, given the privilege that we were born into, and kind of fiercely working towards kind of deconstructing the stereotypes that rightfully so we're so well known for. So yeah.
So isn't that amazing, the synergy, right? Even that's the alignment, like when you go in a place of deepness, like you were going on your path. And I have a 20-year-old, so Gabriel, I chuckle when I think about his path and where it might lead him. And as a parent, it's nice to listen and hear that you found that spot. And then it kind of led you back. I'm going to use to some of those basic core fundamental values that you've been learning probably since you were crawling around, and then you're able to give that gift back to the world.
Yep.
So I want to talk about the overall concept. It's so funny because I didn't look up the meaning of BlackWolf, and I'm actually kind of glad I didn't, because just hearing that really illuminates a place within me, as I think about leadership, because I became a leader quite young. I think it was my early 20s, and running clinics at hospitals, and you are often rudderless, as whether it's young, and I would say an age at this point, but some leaders are just in that space where they're trying, and they're not malintentioned, but sometimes they get lost. So I want to talk a little bit about kind of the overall kind of area view of transformational leadership, and kind of some of the things that you offer at BlackWolf, and help me understand how you work with companies and leaders, and how you decide where they fit in reference to some of your offerings. And whoever wants to answer, that's good with me.
I'm just going to take a beat, to pause, and speak about, my son and a little bit of his history, and really just in a short period. I came, and this is connected to your question. I came to understand in the 80s the importance of human beings transforming, human beings that were born into a belief system, really not being given the option or the awareness, even being aware that there is a choice that they were born into. So when I was in my 30s, I came to understand that I could choose, and that was fundamentally my responsibility to choose. And what I came to see was to choose inclusion versus exclusion. And I know that's a little vague at the moment, but inclusion, literally including the community called the planet Earth. And exclusion is a model that a lot of us have been born into, and aren't aware that we are living from an exclusional place, or a place of not being open to ideas, other concerns, other considerations, other values. And so that would be the distinction. And the 80s and 90s was filled with, and I lived in New York City at the time, programs, processes, teachers that was really qualified later as the human potential movement. So there was a huge movement, I guess I would also include the decade of the 70s, 80s, and 90s, into the question, who am I? It led me naturally into the transition from adolescent to adult, and how important that question is to fundamentally lead the rest of your life from. And what I also came to see was that a parent couldn't do that for the child. Mm-hmm. That the child needed to be mentored in a very different way, in a way that the parent didn't even consider, primarily because we had the role called the parent. We were protecting them. So if we continued to protect them, they would never really discover who they are. They'd be defined by the parent. So Gabriel went into a program called Northwaters Langskeeb when he was 14 years old. Mm. And he has been on, and I'll let him speak for himself, many different adventures and expeditions since he's 14. And that is, Gabriel, how old was that? 20 years ago, right? 23 years ago. And Gabriel is clearly his own man, and makes his own choices and chooses his choices. And I'm very proud and honored that he chose to be a part of BlackWolf. There's a lot more that goes into that, but that's really talking a little bit about Gabriel and a little bit about mentoring and parenting. And I would say fundamentally, how do we move beyond a self-centered experience into a kind of global inclusional experience? Mm-hmm. And unfortunately, a lot of our adolescents are really, who have now moved into their 30s and 40s and 50s and even older, and they're operating from a self-centered experience rather than an inclusional experience. And what I'm seeing now, take that arc into the transformational work. My understanding and my belief is that our beliefs drive our behaviors, and that fundamentally is what transformation means. Mm-hmm. Fundamentally, what transformation means is that if we have disempowering behaviors that we want to change, in order to change them, in order to transform our disempowering behavior, we have to understand, we have to do the work of understanding what our beliefs are that are driving that behavior. And typically what occurs is that disempowering beliefs are really identified and transformed into empowering beliefs. And consequently, disempowering behaviors are transformed into empowering behaviors. So what it is that you are having and what's naturally occurring is choosing your beliefs and behaviors. We human beings want to be inclusional. We don't want to be exclusional. And so what is occurring as a result of that is this sense of freedom within a context called, who am I? So this who am I question is really fundamentally the most important first question that we human beings can be asked or ask ourselves. And who I am or who am I really is connected to who am I being? So it's really connected to the being of who you are, not the doing of who you are. Mm-hmm. And in the absence of who am I, what fills the space and what we're enculturated into, and I'm talking globally now for the most part, particularly in the developed countries or countries that aspire to be developed, they are, and I'm going to use this word very carefully, but very consciously. We're trapped in a model of doing in order to be happy. Mm-hmm. So one of the things that I've learned, and you asked the question, how does BlackWolf decide who to work with? By asking them and listening, which is really foundational to our work. Why do you want to do the work? Well, I want to sell more ad space. I don't think I really want to work with you. Mm-hmm. I want to create a better strategy. Well, I'm not a strategic guy.
Absolutely. Because I think, if we think of the time that we're in and the leadership that we're seeing, unfortunately, let's look on a global, look at what's happened with you in the US, or just a global perspective of the world. I often say, everybody's on tilt. And then you have some leaders that are saying, absolutely, we want change. We want transformation in name alone. And then there's ones that really, really want it. So not the trajectory of, here's my mission, here's my vision, this is where I want to be. But how does that all fit? Because I'm going to think people are going to come towards you like they come towards me to make change. And then as you start to delve further and you start to get the key metrics of what's happening organizationally and the things that needs to be changed, then you get a different kind of perspective. Well, it's all well and good. We want to make some change, but we're really not looking at for that, real, what I call second order change. We're looking for some change just to kind of look good to the marketplace out there.
There's sometimes a very gentle bait and switch, and I think that term notes a lack of integrity, but the integrity piece is really what we're focused on. So what you just mentioned is kind of transactional change. We want to do this and kind of transactional strategy, right? We need to ramp up our widget building. And to do that, we need to be inspired. We need to inspire our employees. I've noticed with clients past that, the lens with which we do our work, it's like, trying to describe a color that's never been seen. And how do you do that with a client that doesn't, currently have that spectrum on their, in their palette? So what Robert just said, we want to work with people that want to do the work and that are, excited to do the work. But I think kind of at the most basic level, we want to work with people that are curious. Right? Mm-hmm. And there's a level of curiosity and willing to play, right? Like, are you committed to having some degree of imagination about what's possible? Or, are you just going to hire us and tell us what you want us to do? And if that's the case, nice to know you.
So let's talk about imagination. I hadn't thought about that. So I'm curious because I know you do some pretty interesting things.
Yeah.
Just talk about the concept of imagination. So I'm a part of a senior leadership team. I know we're committed, mm-hmm. but I'm not thinking imagination. So explain to me what that process is like and what might you be doing to potentially start to introduce people. I'm going to think it's a bit at a time. It's mm-hmm. not, all of a sudden they go from, one state into a playful state. How do you kind of start to introduce the concept of imagination in some of the things that you might do?
Yeah, I think that, imagination is the precursor to innovation, and everyone wants to innovate today. That's like such a hot topic, and how to disrupt in the market through innovation, and how to evolve products, and so usually that's kind of that's more of the selling catchphrase. We'll do
I'm going to you're not going to do a search for creativity, but you're going to look for innovation or disruptors. Mm-hmm. Potentially when people are coming to you, they might come with that perspective, and really at that point you're kind of going through the process and they start to recognize that it's in fact getting to that creative space that will get them to achieve their goals.
Yeah, so one of the kind of services that I've put together and gotten to facilitate CEOs of massive companies around the world is it's a day long, or it can be a couple days. Sometimes it can just be an afternoon activity that involves a lot of strategy, and it's almost like a geocaching exercise, if you're familiar with what that is.
A wee bet.
Kind of, it's like a scavenger hunt.
Yeah, because the kids, I'm going to age myself here, play that with Pokemon Go or something.
Exactly. It's kind of,
that's my extent of it.
Well, then you kind of know, but yeah. What I'll do is I'll build a course, and it will be, it can be in a public park, it could be in a national forest. It can be in downtown Boulder. We've done them in downtown Boulder. And, there's all these kind of virtual and physical clues, and it's a game. I mean, at the end of the day, it's a game, but the activity really is a proxy for how these people work together. And it's, it's my generation. I'm a bit averse to team building. Mm-hmm. It's not a team building activity. It's a kind of culture building activity. And what really at the end of the day, again, it's that proxy that parallels how they interact. And if you can distract them enough to think that it is a game and they can let their walls down and their true colors shine, so to speak, you get mm-hmm. very fascinating things coming out. And one of the big topics of this, you kind of, if it's a team of 12, you break them up into small groups of 3 so that they have more opportunity to interact. And one of the major themes that comes out is what's the intersection between collaboration and competition. Mm-hmm. And so you get these, small teams of 3, and they all want to win, but you don't really define what winning is. The rules are very interpretable and similar to the marketplace. There's different leverage points within the markets that are unseen, and not all the rules are unwritten, right? Not all companies play by this code. The code needs to be defined. And so typically the after the activity, the after action review or the debrief is where major themes come out. But that imagination piece really comes into play because they get to define what winning looks like. And do they want to collaborate as one large group to kind of unlock the puzzle, so to speak? I mean, the course is huge. It can be 100 points of space. It's kind of like an expansive world.
Sounds like fun. It sounds like fun.
It's fun. Yeah, leadership it's leadership at play.
Yeah, absolutely. Who doesn't want to have fun at work? And I think that's oftentimes what's lacking, because it's like, let's do the SWOT analysis, let's do the internal, the external, and all those things. But what I hear here is that you're reaching somewhere within their space, and all roles aside, or you kind of understand how they deal with differences, or how they problem solve, or how their personalities would interact with each other. It sounds like a really fertile space, whatever that space gets defined as, like you said, for people to really drop their guard and come to some, probably a lot of realizations, I would think, as an overall team as well.
Yeah, I think I think one of the most heartbreaking, dichotomies or binaries in corporate culture is that you have to be two separate people. You're your work person, and you're the person when you're out of work. And I think that it's leading to a lot of upset and depression at work, and people, the idea of just not being able to be your true self, and imposter syndrome, because you're pretending. So this play and imagination sparking space, when people get to, and it's not your typical offsite where you're at a fancy hotel in some retreat room and then you share a meal together and then go off to your separate rooms and do it again the next day. And how do you really share in a lived experience together, where work is not defining who you are, you get to define who you are.
Well, it sounds lovely. This was such a great interview that we decided to turn it into a 2-part series. Be sure to tune in next week for part 2, so you don't miss out on the amazing content.
Thanks for tuning in to Authentic Living with Roxanne, creating the space for positive, healthy change. Roxanne is a keynote speaker, psychotherapist, and coach. To work with Roxanne, visit roxannederhage.com/blueprint. We'll see you next time on Authentic Living with Roxanne.